Here's a little interesting game system I picked up. I noticed on Kickstarter. It's called Blinks. Each one of these tiles contains a game, and you can hook them up in such a way that each tile can teach all the others its game, so that you can use all the tiles to play any of the games. Right now I have it loaded with something called Honey, which basically simulates a hive environment. And although it's not a game and that there are no victory conditions, it's more of an optimization puzzle. So if I take these two down here, if I tap them, they'll start to fill with pollen. These are flowers. When you start the game, every tile is a flower. So if I hook them together, and they are magnetic, so you can do that, and I hold down one of them, that tile will promote to the next level once it's filled up. So as soon as it fills with pollen, it's going to switch over to the next type of tile. And sometimes you have to kind of tap it to get it to go. Yeah, there we are. All right, so now we have essentially a worker bee and a regular flower. And notice now that as the flower fills up, the worker bee starts to fill up. And once the worker bee is full, he's going to want to have somewhere to pass his pollen. So let's bring another tile in. We click it to get it started, and we attach it. And now we're going to upgrade it again. So we're going to hold the button down. All right, so when it fills up now, it's also going to upgrade to a worker bee. All right, so now we have a worker, but notice that a worker can't feed a worker. A worker can only feed something called a brood. So if we hold this down and promote it again, now you'll be able to see that the worker can actually feed the brood. Sometimes you have to kind of click it to get it started. Oh no, that's right, it can't promote until it actually fills up. So what we have to do is bring in another one of these guys and promote him to a worker. All right, so now we have a second worker going. All right. And now we should be able to move this brood down here. And as the worker fills up, you'll see him pass on his pollen to the brood. And part of the brood will begin to fill. And actually that's my fault. I did that wrong, because you have to promote him to a worker first. All right, now if I hold this down, he should promote. Okay, yeah, there they go. All right, so now you can see I've got one flower feeding two workers, feeding a brood. The very last thing that we'll need is, let's tuck another brood in here. All right, now, so as this worker here fills up, he'll start to feed both broods. Actually, I have to promote that one the right way. So first I have to promote him to a worker, and he actually has to become a worker first. So let's put him over here temporarily. Okay, there you go. So now he's a worker. And now we can promote him. So he will now become a brood once he fills up. So we'll let this flower here fill him up. We can actually help him out by bringing in another flower. Right, so now we have two flowers feeding him. And he's almost full, and then he'll convert to a brood. All right, so now he's a brood, so we can take him out of here, and let's put him up there. And let's see, we can get another. Let's get another flower in here to help out our other worker right there. And now notice that this flower is kind of out of position, so we probably want to move it so it's up here, say. And we could also bring in another flower over here to start feeding these workers a little more quickly. And now you'll notice that the broods are doing their thing. Now this guy's almost full, so let's go ahead and upgrade him. And let's see what happens when he actually gets full. Okay, so you'll notice he's just changed color. He's now the queen, or she's now the queen. Once the queen fills up, that's sort of the end of the cycle, and the tiles will do a little celebratory pattern. So the whole goal of the thing is to simply figure out how best to optimize the placement of flowers, workers, and broods to feed the queen as quickly as you can. So like I said, there's no actual victory conditions. It's really just more of a puzzle type of thing. But they're about so currently there are 12 of these blinks. There's a game in each one, so there are 12 games for the system. And they do have another batch, I think of about 8 games coming. So they'll be up to around 20. Some of them are quite interesting. Some of them are more utility in nature, like you can use them like dice, or you can use them to choose a starting color or something of that nature. But it's an interesting little system. Reminded me at the time I got it of a thing I used to have called Siftio. And they were quite interesting too. They were cubes. But they died an early death, and the company never really supported them. Unfortunately, I thought it was a great idea. But these are kind of cool, and they do have a software development kit, so you can actually do your own game design if you want. So anyway, I thought some of you folks who read my newsfeed might find this interesting. So you notice the queen is starting to get fed there. She's got one segment lit. And once she goes all the way around and gets fed all the way, it'll do its celebration. Now we could obviously help that out by sticking another brood there on the side. Okay, so now we have this worker feeding this brood, and this worker feeding that brood, and those 2 broods feeding the queen. So depending on how we structure the grid of tiles, we can get a fair number of things feeding the queen, but you really have to look at, what's the best optimization. Is it better to have a lot of flowers feeding one worker, or is it better to feed a couple of workers and then one brood? So there's an interesting tactical problem there on how best to lay out the hive. And you can play this with any number of blinks. So right now I could use all 12 if I wanted, but I thought that might be a little hard. So I started with just a relatively small batch. But it's pretty interesting. I find it fun to sit here and think about how to make it go faster. So you can see now with the 2 broods running, the queen is getting fed a lot more quickly. So you can see that brood in the top right there is just about to trigger off. So the queen should jump up here again in a second by another segment or so. Yep, there she goes. And now the brood on the left is getting fairly close. It looks like it has about 2 or 3 segments left to fill. And again, I could speed this up a little by, let's say we take this guy and we put this other flower in here. So now we've got 3 flowers feeding that left-hand worker. So he'll fill very quickly now, which should speed up the pace of the top left brood. And I could drag in another cube if I wanted, maybe, and stick it in here to feed that worker with 4 flowers. So there's room for improvement here, and I suspect that having two broods may not be the most effective. I'm not sure, just because feeding the queen is so slow anyway. But that's something to play around with more. So you can see the queen's almost full, and as soon as she gets full, she'll do her little celebratory thing in the hive, which affects all the other bees, but doesn't really affect the flowers any. And they basically just dump all their resources and the cycle starts again. So you can try to, you can watch it, say, okay, well, that took, 5 minutes. Maybe I can optimize this and make it go a little faster. So it's an interesting mental challenge kind of thing I like. So again, I kind of hope some of you at least find it interesting. So queen should trigger off here any second. Then we'll cut the video. So let's see how happy she gets. Okay, top left about to fire. And you can see how, there we go. So the queen is happy. And you notice now the queen is now empty and the process starts over. So if I wanted to try to optimize it now, I could change the layout of the hive, see how long it takes, and try to work out the best solution given the number of tiles that are available. Anyway, I hope you like that. And as I play some of the other games, I'll probably record some more videos about it. But I thought this one was kind of interesting to start with. All right, have a good one.